Here we are.
Here we are.
So she's rather silver now that she's been...
Like I said, gray and wrinkled like me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess this is one of those questions you're probably just going to smile at me for.
Maybe.
They've removed all the fancy bits,
Yes.
shall we say.
Yes.
So she's not as pointy as she once was.
Correct.
What are the things that we should look out for when we actually get to see one of these things that you are allowed to talk about as we go around it?
Well, I think it's along the lines of one of the things you said during the interview is that it doesn't look like an airplane. Even standing here looking at it, it still doesn't look like an airplane. And that's because stealth was the number one consideration. So just, I guess, look at the diamond shapes, all those diamond shapes. That's just one aspect of the stealth of it. But they've thought about, if you look at everything that's supposed to be, that would normally be like square or curved, it's pointy.
Yep.
Look at the gear doors. Look at that panel right there. Look at the leading edge of the canopy. Even the intakes. Everything has a slant to it and a pitch to it that's meant to prevent radar from coming back to its source.
So nothing flat enough to give it a straight return.
Essentially.
Yeah. One question I had, the Bombay doors though were quite square, weren't they?
Nope.
Were they not? Okay.
No, you can, if you kneel down, you can see them right there.
Oh yeah. Oh, and they do have they've got the
serrated
edges
on the front
as well.
Yeah.
It's very pretty, even for something that's ungainly. It is.
It is. We used to say that when you look at it from the front, it looks like Darth Vader. So,
I'm just very aware that you're going to smile at me for a few of these questions.
Not at all.
But
Not at all.
What sort of? This is a very technical one. As you're flying, you're saying you're going to make minimal movements as you could. What sort of angle of banks would you be making your turns at when you're within radar coverage?
As little as possible.
So just little gentle turns as you're going, nothing fancy. And what does, I guess you're listening constantly for anything that the sensors are picking up. Are you actually hearing very much, or what can you tell that you need to maybe change your profile slightly?
Well, there's the whole problem is there's not much you can do about it. So you tend to just kind of say, well, que sera, or que sera if you're speaking in Spanish. So yeah, you kind of knew where things were supposed to be. But the problem with a mobile battlefield, if somebody has a mobile SAM, they could be anywhere. Yeah. So that was part of the problem is like, well, we took our best whack at it and we're just going to follow this line and go see what happens.
So when you were hot prepping the aircraft on the walkarounds, what would you be looking for things that might be out of shape? Because a standard walkaround, you're going, checking the control surfaces, things like that. For an aircraft like this, what additionally are you looking for?
Well, first of all, that there's no dents or dings, nothing that's going to affect the RCS, the radar cross section. So in that respect, it's just sort of a standard walk around. Everything's where it should be. The tires, like those tires, obviously are not serviceable. They've seen a few too many landings, things like that. But then you more specifically, in this case, the bays would be open. You could access the weapons. There were certain settings that were supposed to be on that weapon that were geared for whatever target that aircraft was going after. And so then the walk around itself was fairly quick, but then get in, start the engines, spin everything up, and does everything work. It does everything as it should be. So literally at that point, I could just have them pull the chocks and go fly the mission.
Right. Okay.
So that's what we tried to get it to minimize the chance of the guy coming out, getting in and going, oh, this didn't work. If there was any chance of us catching it beforehand, that was what my job was. And it mostly had to do with the internal, all the brains and,
all the boxes were doing what the boxes should be doing.
Yeah.
So take off, hit a tanker, and then form up and head in. Would you be going in on your own, or would you have friends with you?
We generally flew as a two-ship when we left, but essentially, once you were crossing the line, you were on your own.
Okay.
And you weren't talking to anybody. You'll notice there's a distinct lack of projections, even from this old girl. They're there, and you have to look a little bit closely to see them, but they're there. But essentially, you sucked it all in, and it was very quiet and peaceful.
Just became a hole in the sky.
About an hour and a half to 2 hours of just peace and quiet until everybody started shooting. You know?
So we were saying after we finished chatting in the other room, it was about a 7 hour
ish
round about that.
Yeah.
Let's get to the basics here, and by basics I mean what happens if you need to use the loo.
Piddle pack. It's basically a little Ziploc bag with a dehydrated sponge, and luckily this airplane, the autopilot was quite good, so you could just turn on the autopilot and go on about your business. And then for anything more than that, we basically ate high protein, low residue kind of foods, so that you didn't have any issues until you got back.
That, and then you had issues.
Well, yeah.
We'll move swiftly on from that.
High protein eggs, meat, those types
Yeah.
of things. So you then had to hydrate quite well in order to clear that out.
For something as cutting edge.
So that's what the accessory packet B was for, with
the spices.
With the Tabasco, yeah.
Get things going.
Yeah.
With something as cutting edge as this, what would go wrong with it? Because it's something that is still, I see, even in operation was quite experimental.
Just like I said, the box is not doing what the box is supposed to be doing, and it could be any number of boxes. I had a couple of instances where you get off the tanker, you're going to go meet and greet somebody, and you go, where is this thing taking me? And then you start trying to sort that out, and it's like, well, we're not going tonight because it doesn't want to go there. So I've told other interviewers that these things do have a personality of their own, and you have to kind of learn. It's almost like a horse or any other creature that you deal with. It's like, this one doesn't like that. This one doesn't like doing this, or it doesn't want to. So how do you then convince it to do that? In some cases, there were some nights where it's like, no, we're not going to the dance tonight. We're going home. So
you got to get to know its quirks, its own personality.
Yeah. There were a couple. There was one in particular that I was, after the third time was a charm. I told the maintenance people, I said, if you give me that airplane again, I was going to get right off the end of the runway and I'm just going to punch out of it. They're like, you're not kidding. I said, no, I'm not kidding. Because the last 3 times I almost left it out somewhere in the desert, maybe with me in it, So no.
It's fascinating to be stood next to one this close, and seeing them put back together. She's going to look great when they've finished with her. But I guess one of the things that you're not going to answer this really is a lot of the things that we see on the airframe now are pretty standard aircraft airframe structure. All the stuff that's missing is the fancy stuff. But what level of sort of concern when you're looking at, you're saying the dents and things like that, if you had a dent in the bits that aren't here now, would that increase your visibility a lot, or?
It was going to change it.
Yeah.
It was hard to say if it was going to make it better or worse, but you assumed that it was going to make it worse. So then if it was detected early enough, we'd have something done about it.
But it's, I guess, the sort of your philosophy of thinking of what you need to look for when you're getting ready is quite different, because it's,
this, I don't know, the leading edge, which was essentially, if you look at it, the leading edge was a straight line from nose to the wingtip. And so I, in particular, spent a fair amount of time kind of literally going down the leading edge, just looking at, and it wasn't razor sharp, but it was, for a leading edge, it's pretty damn sharp. So, and at least for somebody my size, it was a good place to knock my head. So hopefully no other tall guy ran into it and dented the leading edges, for instance.
This is the first time I've ever seen one in the flesh, and it's quite impactful because
it's all these flat panels and weird angles, and it defies explanation as an aircraft. It does that, and it's one of those things where when you see it flying, you see it sideways versus you see it from the bottom or the top. It's a completely different shape every time. So you could see it 3 different ways, and you'd think you saw 3 different UFOs or something flying through the air.
The thing that keeps popping into my head is it doesn't look right, but it does look right. When you're saying this is a stealth aircraft, you go, well, yes. But then if you were to say F-16 over there, which was a classic fighter aircraft, it's which you would probably say is aesthetically different.
Yes.
I'm not going to say more or less pretty.
Pleasing. You're going to use that biased word of pleasing.
But when you say this aircraft is literally to hide in the dark, it looks exactly like it should do.
Yeah, it's shaped for what it's meant to do, and that's the beauty of it. That's its own beauty. This function, it's purpose built.
I can hear the affection in your voice.
Oh yeah.
It's even though you're banging your head on the cockpit quite a bit.
Yeah, there may be some dents in that one. I flew this one home from the desert. I landed this at Nellis on 1 April 1991, April Fool's Day.
What was that transit? How long was the transit back? Was it one go, or did you stop?
No, it was three hops. Camise to Zaragoza to Langley, and Langley to Nellis. And then of our, I think it was 8 aircraft. I can't remember how many airplanes we brought back, but 4 of us went into Nellis. Several went to Tonopah. Several went straight to the depot for refurbishment. So we kind of scattered somewhere over Utah, I think, or New Mexico, and sent airplanes to different locations.
Because I guess they needed a bit of TLC when you got back, because you flew them hard for that campaign.
We, as I said, as pilots were flying on average every other night. These things at some point were going up there twice a night.
Wow.
Towards the end of the war, they were making 2 trips a night, 7.5 hour-ish trips. So it's almost like, you're looking at a Formula One type of machine that's driving 2 flat-out races every day. And think about the amount of work that goes into something like that.
Yes.
Versus a real Formula One where you drive the shit out of it. Sorry. For the race, for whatever that is, 2.5 hours, and then it doesn't see another track for a week.
It's designed just to last that long.
Yeah. That's the thing that most people don't realize is, and even with the A-10s, when I was across the street at Davis-Monthan, even though they're not fast aircraft, we were flying those things flat out somewhere between 2 and 4 times a day. So imagine that kind of TLC that needs to go into a machine to keep it in that sort of top fighting condition, racing condition, however you want to state that. That's quite a feather in the cap for the maintainers and the people who keep them up there. Yeah.
Because that's the old story. You guys break them and they have to put them back together.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they broke on their own. I broke a couple, but there were some that were just bound and determined. They just didn't like me.
Here's another silly question.
Yes, sir.
I'm very good at
so far. I will credit you with not having asked any silly questions, by the way. So
let me try. Let me try.
You're going to have to try harder.
Okay. Looking at what should I be looking for as something that is unique that you're allowed to talk about, really? Because I know there's a whole bunch of bits. But
I'm looking right at it. Right. So you look in the intake here.
Okay.
Ramon. Yes. Look in the intake.
Yes, come here, cameraman. Let's
see that piece of aluminum hanging down there.
Yep.
So what the hell is that? Yeah. So if you walk a little closer, you look up through there and there's daylight showing on the top of the intake.
Yep.
So that was the blow-in door.
Oh, right.
So this bit right here had a grid across it, which I affectionately call the ice cube trays. So when you flew into nasty weather, and as a matter of fact, we're in the anniversary season of Desert Storm right now. Yep. This is when the war was going on. So these things would ice completely over
Okay.
and block. And so then what would happen is the engine, of course, is going to suck air from wherever it can. So then the vacuum would just literally pull that door down and open up. And then you got a light in the cockpit that said BID, blow-in door. Your ICS has changed. Oh, by the way. But that bit is basically just one of those gas struts.
Okay.
So then once the vacuum was less, i.e. the ice melted, then the blow-in door would close, and then you ran your air through the normal inlet.
So you that would all happen on its own as the pressure changed
Yes,
in the
the icing would too. That would happen automatically as well.
Yes.
This bit right here is going to look familiar for anybody who has a car. This is where your wiper went. There was a wiper that went in this channel that you could turn it on, and it would try to clear the stuff off the inlet. But so it was a big windshield wiper.
An incredibly stealthy secret airplane with windshield wipers over the inlet.
Yes.
Yeah.
They weren't stealthy when you used them, so you had to be very kind of judicious about how you did that. But and I'll say it didn't work worth a damn. It looked like a licorice snow cone. If there is the black licorice. Mm-hmm. All I would do is I'd have a flashlight and I'd shine the light down on the intake, and you could see out the window, and it's like, oh Jesus, this dark ice gob on the front of this thing.
I guess that's the other question with icing on all the usual places that icing is usually on angles, pointy bits. You've got a lot of angles and pointy bits on this.
Yeah.
How, I guess icing was one of your big worries on a normal flight? Or?
It was, but it was, I don't know what icing does to the RCS. I don't think it changes. It's just water.
Yeah.
But the aerodynamics were secondary to stealth. So if you go back, let's go back to the wing line here, and you can kind of see the lack of curvature, but you can see the airfoil, if you want to call it that. And so it probably wouldn't take much to disrupt the airflow over this, again, diamond-shaped bit right here. So still looking down the leading edge, if you back up a little bit more, you can see it goes from a slope to a flat. Oh, I can see.
Yeah.
You're tall. And then it slopes back down again. So
again, it's not a classic airfoil shape.
Not a classic airfoil shape, and therefore probably subject to disruption by something like icing pretty easily.
But again, you just cope with that as needs be.
Yeah. Well, and you weren't asking a lot out of it. Again, you're being fairly sneaky about it. So, if you had done some kind of Hayaka turn, you might have gotten a rude surprise from that. But we weren't asking that of the aircraft.
Things like recovery. We were talking earlier about in training spinning things. If this went into a spin, I guess that's big trouble.
Yep. Nope. Don't do it.
You pull the yellow handles and
there was the term wobbly goblin was there for a reason. So some of the early on guys got to experience that. I never did, and I never did want to. So
you treat it nice, and it treats you nice.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by the of course I'm on camera. Tailpipe. Yeah. It being flat,
which is not a pipe, by the way. It's kind of a harmonica shape,
and that's always seemed a very strange structure for that. Because we're surrounded by all kinds of jets of different shapes. The one thing that they all have in common is a round pipe at the back. Mm-hmm. Whereas here we've got a big rectangular slot. Yeah. That, I guess, again, for radar cross-section.
Well, not just for radar cross-section, but for infrared diffusion as well.
So I guess that's how they then were able to track them a bit later over the Balkans, wasn't it? It was something like. Again, I'm getting the smile.
Beats me.
Yes, we'll move on.
That guy's a friend of mine, by the way. But
all right, yeah. It's just another sort of aspect where everything is going to the form is going straight to the function.
Exactly.
Did it notice? Was it noticeable that you had like something like this coming out? Did that mean flight characteristics, or was it just so different to normal that you just got used to the whole thing as a package, or were you noticing little quirks on it.
Just the overall lack of thrust.
Yeah.
I mean, the engine itself was a TF404, so same engine as in the F-18.
Yep.
Non-afterburning, of course. But I credit that as being a pretty damn good engine. I know that it eats ice. It just ate the dickens out of it. But yeah, when you take the round pipe that feeds out of the 404 and then you step on the beer can and flatten it out, you're going to lose efficiency. You're going to lose thrust. And so, but it just became part and parcel of operating the aircraft. It was under thrusted, or at least it was at the altitudes we were operating. So you just, acted accordingly.
Yep. Even from this angle, this angle is very science fiction-y.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Battlestar Galactica sort of stuff back here.
Yeah.
It must have been pretty cool having this as the day job.
It was. There's other cool things just to illustrate. So right there, that silver piece, that's where the drag chute goes.
Okay.
So you notice that there's two, whatever the hell they were called, flapperons or flapperdoodles or something. But there was two of these on each wing and the tail fins, and that's it.
Yep.
As far as flaps or speed brakes, there was no drag devices. So once you hit the ground, and oh, by the way, these brakes were not the world's greatest. That drag chute better work. Otherwise, you were either gonna heat probably gonna blow the tires, or you were gonna go into the barrier to get stopped. So very dependent on old technology drag chutes to make it work.
So fully loaded with minimal flappage as well. I guess you had to be going some to get it off the ground. So you got minimal thrust, and what sort of were you rotating at?
It was similar to the A-10 actually. The only time it got sporting was if you didn't drop and you came back and you had a pretty heavy fuel load, and then you were in a pretty high-speed tricycle once you landed on the runway. I will say that I would give a Formula One car a run for its money on one of the two landing rolls that I did that were like much faster than I really cared to. With three wheels. With three wheels.
And not very big wheels either.
No.
Yeah.
So they're spinning that little nose wheel is going at a high RPM at close to 200 knots.
This, again, another silly question.
No, you're still over however many.
You're being very nice to me, John. That's fair. All aircraft have their own sort of sounds and things that you're listening out for. What was it like flying in this? Because I would assume the airflow over it would be making quite different noises to a normal aircraft. Were you listening out for anything in particular, for say a sensor door open that shouldn't be, or something flapping? Would you know that in the cockpit, or were you quite quiet and tucked away up there?
It was pretty quiet and tucked away. I'm having to think back. I'm going back in time, decades to go. Well, one of the things, especially at night or over the middle of the ocean, one of the things that gets your attention is the hydraulic accumulator in certain aircraft, because it goes ka-chunk as it recharges itself after you've used, if you put the gear down or something. And I don't recall there being a whole lot of very much of anything sound-wise with this thing. It remarkably, as goofy as all these angles look like, this is a very sleek design, and it would go fast. I mean, upper, high subsonic, but it liked to go fast. If you slowed down, then it would kind of start to. It was like a speedboat. So then you're up on the plane, and then, but it wouldn't give you a whole lot of departure characteristics or anything like that. And like I said, I was never very curious to discover what those were.
I'm just blown away by this, and I can't thank you enough for, again,
You're
spending
welcome.
a bit of time pointing out some bits on your old bird, and of course the bits that we're not allowed to talk about, which aren't here.
Yeah.
There we are. But she looks great with the tail on, and even with the leading edge not here yet. And it looks, you're right. It looks like it's going fast, even though it's sitting down again.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome.